sometimes the initial response from PMs is, we just need to work harder. We need to work harder, we need to work faster, we need to move, and make progress. Instead, sometimes you need to slow down so you can move fast again. And sometimes you just might need to reset things a little bit, or at least slow things down enough that you can go and properly plan to be able to go and get it back on track. Because too often it puts more of the pieces around quality, around cost, and that more time and scope, they put them all at risk. And from an organization perspective is really taking a more empathetic look at where have we set up the project for failure instead of how we're setting up the project for success. Before the PM comes on, and sometimes that might be, we need to have better sponsors, because the worst thing that you could have from an executive sponsor for a project is not that they're angry about the project, but they don't care about the project.
This conversation will explore how to turn around failing projects without replacing the team or the PM. Our guest today, Benjamin Chan, is Principal Project Leadership Success Coach and Consultant at CLYMB Consulting and a former PMI board member. Welcome to Life and IT Project Management, where we bridge the gap between life and IT project management with practical, relatable content. Join me in welcoming Benjamin Chan.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. All right. So the first question I have, let's begin with struggling projects. Now, what defines a struggling project, and what are the key warning signs of a project in trouble?
Yeah, I mean, if you're keeping a good track of your project, there's obviously going to be those indicators that you have around your schedule, your cost, are you on budget, how does the forecast look, all of those type of areas, as well as what are you seeing right now inside of your issues and all of those other risks that you have involved, right? But along with that, the things that may not be on paper is, how are people feeling about the project? How are your sponsors feeling about it? How is the team feeling about it? Are they feeling very negative? What are they saying to you about the project? Are they being honest with you? And maybe even, what are they saying behind your back on it? Not that I'm saying there's a lot of gossip mill on it, but there could be other rumors that you're hearing through the organization as to what they're thinking about the project. How is it online? How is it moving forward, right? Do they feel like you're addressing a lot of the issues appropriately? And even through PMI's research, this is a little bit dated, but I think it was back in Pulse of the Profession back in 2017, a lot of the failures for project are through communication. There's some way tied back either as a primary or secondary reason about it, right? So what you talked about around stakeholders, are they aligned? Do they know what they're doing? Do the sponsors have good support of it? Do they understand what goals we're trying to go and reach? Right. And usually you can feel that sentiment already building along with the actual data that you're reporting out of your project status. And so if you're already having those watermelon project status reports where it's green on the outside, but it's red on the inside, those are just ticking time bombs waiting to go and happen, because at some point they're going to cut into that watermelon and they're going to figure out something is really wrong, versus you're able to continually, truthfully project out on it and let people know, hey, here's how things are going, right? So you should have a good indicator on both the hard data as well as what is the soft data you're.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much for covering both angles, both sets of problem. Now, that will lead me to the next question, because the next question will speak to how should the PM respond. We've already defined the fact that it could be, yes, a hard data problem or a soft data problem. Hard data problem, we spoke to the forecasts and issues, how issues are tracking, how issues have been resolved, and slippages and so forth. With the soft data, we're looking at gaps in communication, stakeholder management, and even the team having respect for the PM when it comes to them seeing that PM can really drive resolutions forward. So those are two huge problem sets. How should the PM begin to respond?
Well, I think it even leads up to before the response, because some of the indicators as well, if I go back to it, is there's a snowballing effect. More and more issues start to go and crop up, and people start to feel more rushed. People are trying to quickly find solutions that may not be solutions. They're just kind of band-aid fixes on things to just be able to go and continue with the progress. right? And when we have that happen, what happens is then more and more issues start to come out, and there's a scrambling effect, right? Everyone's just trying to be able to go forward, and then you start to go and reach burnout. And sometimes the initial response from PMs is, we just need to work harder. We need to work harder. We need to work faster. We need to move, move, move and make progress. And instead, sometimes we need to slow down. And it's very opposite way of thinking, but sometimes you need to slow down so you can move fast again. And my suggestion for PMs is take a look at what the real issues are. Take a look at what people are saying and the results that you're observing. Really listen to not only just the team members, but your stakeholders. What is actually going on? And sometimes you just might need to reset things a little bit, or at least slow things down enough that you can go and properly plan to be able to go and get it back on track. Because too often the PMs will go and just try and move everything as fast as they can to be able to meet those dates, when really it puts more of the pieces around quality, around cost, and that more time and scope. They put them all at risk by trying to go and move quickly versus, you know what, we're going to take a day. Maybe it's just a day, just to think. Let's go and take everything off the plate. We know we're behind schedule, and people are going to feel that inner urge to move, but it's like, let's just take that time to really strategize, really discuss and plan out, how are we going to go and move forward properly? How are we going to move towards success rather than struggle through failure?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You've spoken to slowing down to really assess what the real issues are with the team, and get to move forward, like propel forward afterwards. But when they do slow down, and that leads me to the next question, and I'm speaking,
Sure.
always remember I'm speaking on a proxy for the audience. So that leads me to the next question. So what are we slowing down and looking at? And when I say looking at, I could ask the question, what skill sets should the PMs have
Sure.
to assess a struggling project? But let me not ask that. Let me ask the question of the aspiring PM, which is, fine, what am I slowing down to look at, and what am I, what competency am I leveraging to even look at what I need to look at? Does that sound like a question?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say for either aspiring managers or current project managers is you have to be able to go and slow down and really, one is listen, right? Know what people are telling you. Everyone's going to tell you something from their point of view, which doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. And that's always hard because, yeah, you would love, it's not saying that they're lying. It's just saying they're only seeing it from certain perspectives. And as you listen more to other stakeholders, to other people inside of the team and your sponsor, you start to have a better understanding of what is the real story going on there, right? So part of that is, one, you have to listen. Then you have to go and look at, how does strategic problem solving look like, right? So when you have so many of these issues coming up, there's delays, is really asking that why question, right? So the 5 whys, very elementary tool, but it definitely helps you go and dive into it, because like you said before, it's not necessarily the team's competency to be able to go and do it. There could be multiple different issues that are underlying it. And maybe some of the goals or market conditions of the project originally have completely shifted. Somehow, the objectives have changed, and now you're delivering something that doesn't completely align. And so no wonder all of your deliverables are off the mark, right? Because the goalposts have moved. So working through a lot of that root cause discussion and really pulling the ego out of it to understand, well, what is the impact of all of these things to the larger picture, and making sure that when we're looking at all the issues that are coming up, how are they aligned to that problem, right? So the other piece is then prioritization. What are the things that we really need to focus on versus what is noise? Because it can very easily be overwhelming when you have so many issues coming on and you're like, crap, I got to fix all of them. I got to fix all of them now, because that's what the demands are, right? But you really have to go and objectively prioritize what are the strategic areas that we want to go and hit. What are the most important areas that are going to serve our goals, as well as then understanding what are the real gaps we have on our team, right? So the gap identification of maybe it's a capability we're missing, maybe it's a skill on our team that we're missing, or maybe it's allowing, people on the team to focus on certain things. Who knows? There could be a ton of different areas, and a lot of it, again, it could be around the communication. Hey, when you put this deliverable out, we need to make sure the team's notified so they can move forward with their workflow, whatever it might be. Who knows? Right? But even that creative problem solving, understanding how are we going to fix some of these problems and seeing what will work, that's where that detailed problem solving with prioritization will help you then solve the biggest problems inside of your project to help move it forward. Right? So a lot of these skills are things that you can go and practice already. And it sounds easy, but you have to almost resist your urge to be like, okay, well, let's solve it immediately. Let's solve it right now. We have to really take that time to listen, to be able to understand what that strategic picture looks like. How does it all fit together? What does that plan and schedule? It might need to be rebaselined, right? And then the prioritization side. How are we going to actually prioritize what's important and separate the big rocks from possibly a lot of the noise that your team or yourself might be distracted with?
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you for itemizing them in that. And it's beautiful that, of course, you started without even having any, you're just flowing. You're just saying it from your heart.
I've done this enough.
So it's fantastic. So for the audience, just as Ben has said, you start with listening to stakeholders, and I might even add listen to the data. Listen to the data. In fact, both soft and hard data. When you start with that, then you want to move on to understanding what the strategic direction is. One of the tools you can use. Ben did mention the 5 whys, right? Understand what has changed, external context, internal context, and priorities and all that. Then you now get to prioritization. Now, with prioritization, you begin to talk about, how do we solve this problem with the biggest, the most concerning, most critical piece first? Then does your team have the capacity to bridge the gaps, and what the gaps are, and so forth? And then you can drive forward from there, taking it one piecemeal at a time. Did that sort of like get over everything, Ben? Or you want to chime in?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, the other ad, now that I think about it, is also making sure people can snap out of their own perspectives, right? And sometimes that can be difficult because everyone has that negative lens on things of like, oh, this is crap. I don't want to do this. This isn't going to work, right? Is how are you going to reset some of their perspectives to say, hey, how are we going to move forward, right? So as a PM, being able to provide that vision for the team, how they're going to proceed forward, and I don't know, to an extent, giving them a little bit more hope to be able to drive towards so you can turn that hope into action, right? That's really going to be key in terms of leading your team forward.
Fantastic. And that easily just transitions into the next question for this.
Awesome. Yeah.
And the next question speaks to, so you're done with clarifying what the rebaselining basically, right? After you're done with rebaselining, you're going back to your team to basically give them hope and strategic direction. How does a PM assess and leverage the team's existing strengths to drive project recovery?
So you really have to understand your team. That's one part. When I go into projects, spend quite a bit of time understanding what do they do, what are their roles, what are their capabilities, to be able to understand how do we then use that to our best of our ability to go and move forward. Some people may be missing something, and it might be a tool. It might be other support areas where they need help with communicating better, right? Who knows? Especially when you're working with technical teams, let's say from the IT. I come from a computer engineering background. I totally get it. I hate writing stuff. But sometimes it could be just quick communication things of how do they better communicate with other team members or stakeholders, right? So the long-term success is really understanding what is the pulse and the movement of your team, as well as where are the gaps? Where do we need to improve in order to be able to reach the end goal, right? And a lot of it is honestly going to be that communication piece, making sure your team is tied with yourself. They're not hiding information. They're not scared. You have to build that culture appropriately so that they know they can be open in finding ways to move forward.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So yes, we began to speak to assessing what the strengths of his or her team is or are, basically to even get involved with project recovery. This is after prioritization. Now, you also want to make sure that once you're done assessing their capacities, when it comes to communication, when it comes to other soft skills, helping them begin to build that, helping them culture-wise, basically facilitating the right culture and collaboration that will ensure long-term success and excellence in recovery efforts. Now, would you want to add any other strategies beyond communicating, working on the culture of the team, assessing their gaps, and basically figuring out using prioritization to figure out when those gaps will be required, when those competencies will be required, and have sort of like a plan for that, bridging those gaps. Beyond those, anything else to ensure long-term success?
Well, I would say probably just two other items. One is accountability, and two is celebration. So if you're implementing new processes, you're working with a team to implement new solutions or problem solving, right, is to make sure that people are following through on what's expected to be done, right? And in previous posts on LinkedIn, I've talked about it a little bit, is accountability is not an event. It's a process. You have to be consistent with it. And if you're not going to be consistent with it, then your solutions that you're putting forward completely fall to the wayside if no one's going to do it. So you have to keep people accountable to it. But at the same time, you also want to make sure you're celebrating the wins. So when people are following through on their pieces, celebrate it. When we realize the outcomes of those actions, celebrate them, right? Celebrate your team for moving forward towards their success. And it doesn't mean you need to go and get a Starbucks gift card for everyone or a Tim Hortons gift card. But if you want to be able to do it, like, be able to go and praise people in the right way and provide that celebration for your team to know that you're moving towards the direction, right? Even if you're moving from a red to a yellow, that is something to celebrate, right? If you're able to go and storytell and get the sponsors to be able to agree to possibly the new timeline or new objectives that align better with the project, or changing the scope to align better with the objectives, right? Those are things to be celebrated when you have, though it sounds weird, but if you have a change document that gets approved by your sponsor and other managers, it's like, great, that means there is alignment there.
Progress.
So celebrate
Yes.
those areas.
Thank you so much. Thank you for adding those two. Now that leads me to the next question, which speaks to enablement. Now, how can technology, popular now, AI, of course, but technology, whether PM tools and non-PM tools, support rescuing struggling projects?
I think from a hard data perspective is one is taking a lot of those mundane tasks out of the equation, let them focus on the things that actually add value, right? So driving some of the productivity and workflow is definitely an area. The other piece is being able to process the data. So the things around your budget, around how the project is moving forward, right? Have those areas be able to go and be calculated for you, hopefully, in the right way that provides the right picture. But again, you as a project manager should reviewing it and making sure that it's correct as well, right?
Okay.
The last one, and probably most important for me of how I've seen technology help, is communication. How are we going to be able to better communicate with our team, within our stakeholders, whatever it is? And sometimes it's as simple as, hey, here is the team's chat group for specifically support issues and who's responsible for managing them and making sure those are solved. Understanding how are we communicating with the group and organizing the group so you're not there on email just saying, okay, this one I'm going to send to that person and this one I'm going to send to this person and I forgot who I sent it to, whatever it is, right? Help you organize a lot of that communication and structure it in a way that's effective for reaching project results.
Awesome. So basically enhanced analytics, enhanced tracking, and enhanced communication.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. All right. So that leads me to the last question, which is beautiful.
Sure.
This went through efficiently. All right. Okay. How can organizations build resilience to prevent future project struggles?
So this is my philosophy on it. And this is also where I see a gap in a lot of organizations and why I've also started my business is that the PMOs are generally there to go and work through the process and the governance of how projects should be executed and making sure the right things are done. But what happens when the PM is struggling? How are we actually able to go in and help them? And to me, part of that resilience is how are we building our PMs to be more capable, more confident, more strategic, as well as improving their tactical ability, right? And in my opinion, that's where I love to do the coaching side of it. I love to go and help PMs be able to go and build that capability so that they are detecting it first. They're able to go and manage it more effectively and be able to continue using their skills for not only their project now, but for the projects they have in their future. And from an organization perspective is really taking a more, I want to say, empathetic look at how projects are being delivered. They love relying on the hard data to be able to tell the story. And yet, some of it, in my opinion, they don't necessarily look at themselves as an organization as to where could we be at fault? Where have we set up the project for failure instead of how we're setting up the project for success? And that's where that internal review of how organizations can better set up their projects for success before the PM comes on, that needs to be really looked at. And sometimes that might be we need to have better sponsors. We need to build our sponsors a little bit better so that they're engaged. Because the worst thing that you could have from an executive sponsor for a project is not that they're angry about the project, but they don't care about the project. When apathy kicks in and they don't care, my gosh, like that's a whole other part of training and engagement and support that the projects need, right? And again, that is something outside of the project manager's control.
Right. Fantastic. Fantastic. That was beautiful. I know Dawn. Don't know if you know Dawn Meehan?
Yep. I've heard of
Yeah.
I don't know her personally, but yes, I know of her on LinkedIn.
Right, right. So Dawn has a book, Meet the Players in Project Land. One phrase that even in my house we always go back to and laugh about. She said, if you're a new project manager and you get into a new project and you think that there are no stakeholders that are not impacted negatively by the success of your project, I'm sorry for you.
Definitely.
You have to bridge that gap, find out who that is, and
Yes.
bridge that gap as soon as possible before it becomes an issue. So even and you might be unlucky, to your point, you might be unlucky that whoever has been documented and captured as your business sponsor or technology sponsor also doesn't care. That's another kettle of fish.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely is. And that's where it's going to be part of the organization to help educate what does a sponsor look like, right?
Mhm.
Especially if it's tied into larger strategic objectives that the organization is trying to reach.
Right, right, right. Fantastic. And it's great that you do this for PMs and they can reach out to you, and you also help enterprises as well, correct?
Yes, I do. So for me, I hold project leadership workshops where I work with the PMOs or organizations to be able to understand where are the areas that they want to focus on making sure their PMs are educated on or learn and can build their skills on so that they become that confident and strategic project leader. The piece that I love doing as well is this has to be coupled in with coaching. So there's coaching along with the workshop that happens for 2 months along with the workshop to help make sure how are we understanding how these skills are being integrated into their day-to-day work. It's great to go to a workshop and say, hey, I learned one thing, and maybe I'll think about how to apply it, right? I really feel that people need to then see how does it actually work with their environment. And every culture, every organization is a little bit different. Everyone has their
Yes.
own circumstance. So it's not me telling them, hey, you should do it like this. It's what do we think we should do so that you can be most effective? I
Mhm.
also do one-on-one coaching with project managers that if they have struggles or challenges that they want to be able to overcome, that they can go and contact me as well. And we work through to help them reach their goals.
Awesome. Awesome. Fantastic. And that definitely gets me into the next question I'll ask, which is what I ask all guests at the end of the interview. Do you have any specific product or service or workshop coming up very shortly that would interest the guests or enterprises?
Yeah, at this point, if there's any organizations or PMOs looking to be able to go and have their project managers build up their capability through workshops and coaching, contact me. You can find me on LinkedIn under PM Coach Ben. And we're more than open to kind of talk about and see how that can be most effective for you. And again, if you are also interested in the one-on-one coaching as a project manager practitioner and looking to be able to elevate your skills, again, contact me on LinkedIn, set up a free call with me, both either corporate or individual, and I'd love to have the conversation with you.
Fantastic, fantastic. We hope this has been very useful to you out there, aspiring PMs, experienced PMs, especially experienced PMs in this case where you have suffered, like Stuart was saying, scars on the soul. Some PMs have had scars on your souls
Absolutely.
because of some
Absolutely.
gaps, right?
Yeah.
So we hope this has been useful to you. Please let us engage, like, share, ask questions. Don't forget to click the subscribe and bell notification button once this is out, because this will be on our YouTube channel at Life and IT Project Management. And we would like that your feedback can be passed across to Ben, just in case you want him to come back and speak to something else. But of course, you've heard how you can reach out to him. He has a LinkedIn profile that would also be shared and included in at the end of this video. And now, until our next show, please remember, every man is the architect of his fortunes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right.